as a business owner, and I've experienced it, and stop me if you've heard this, but people always want to offer you advice. And it's hard when you're an entrepreneur and they're in the corporate world to take that advice. But are you qualified to give people advice? Is your advice hurting your business? You might be surprised by the answer. We're going to learn the answer to that question today.
Welcome to the KeyHire Small Business Podcast, hosted by Corey Harlock, creator of KeyHire Solutions, where small business owners learn how to build stronger teams, simplify growth, and scale confidently. Got feedback or topic ideas? Send us a text. If you're listening on a handheld device, tap the link in the show notes to message the show. Subscribe or follow on your favorite platform, and follow KeyHire Solutions on social media for more insights and updates between episodes. To learn more about how KeyHire can help scale your business, visit keyhire.solutions. Connect with Corey on LinkedIn through the link in the show notes. Mention you're a listener, and he'll accept your request. And now, on with the show. Here's your host, Corey Harlock.
So before we get down to business, just a couple comments here. We had an interesting comment on our November 17th episode on finding exceptional talent during the great hiring freeze. Ricky C. chimed in and said, improving the hiring process is essential for building a strong team, all the way from England. So Ricky, thanks for the comment. We appreciate it. On with the show. It's a big show. Show number 100. We made it to 100, Matt. It's been a long journey, but we are here and we have an amazing guest joining us for our 100th show today, all the way from Toronto, Ontario, Canada. Shannon Minifie. She is the CEO of Box of Crayons, and they are a learning and development company that partners with enterprise organizations to help embed culture that drives performance, right up our alley. So Matt, let's bring on Shannon. How you doing?
I'm doing well, Corey. How are you?
Good. How badly did I mess up your Box of Crayons and what you guys do?
You didn't at all? No, that's great. You nailed it. You nailed my last name. You're
Minifie.
on a roll. Minifie, you got it. Yeah.
Oh man, a couple shows ago, we had a guy named Sean Baymee, but it was, I pronounced it Bohm. I'm like,
right.
And he's like, yeah, not even close, but don't worry, everyone says Bohm. And I'm like, oh man, I missed it.
Oh, shoot.
Very cool. And now I try to clarify, but I thought I had a good handle on your name.
Yeah, no, you did.
How cold is it up there right now?
It is.
We're in the throes of February here.
I mean, with the wind chill, I think it's minus 17. I don't know what that is in Fahrenheit. And we're in the midst of a snowstorm. So my husband just got sent home from his office. They're shutting down. Yeah.
So I think the Fahrenheit and Celsius scale cross over at minus 32, right?
Is sure. Okay.
I think so. So it's probably pretty close to minus 17 Fahrenheit, which is really freaking cold.
It's very cold. It's unpleasant.
Yeah. I don't miss it. Cool. So give us the elevator pitch on Box of Crayons, which you guys like do in a little more depth because it's such a cool company.
Yeah. I mean, so at Box, I mean, you introduced me by saying that we help embed organizational cultures that drive performance. That's true. That's the big problem. But like let's bring it down to like what it is and the nuts and bolts, right? So Box of Crayons, we really focus on a really specific thing, and it seems small, but it has that big impact when it becomes the way that a behavior or an organization just behaves, when it becomes a cultural logic of that organization. So we help people in organizations become more coach-like. That's the little thing that we do. And that means that we are focused on a very specific behavioral shift, which is around slowing down the rush to action and advice giving and staying curious longer. And, curiosity is really that key thing here. How to stay curious.
Yeah, I love that.
When like every ounce of your being and every external pressure too is telling you that the best thing that you can do is be directive and know answers and tell people what to do, right? So yes, we partner with organizations to shift that culturally. But if we get down to what it is, that's the shift in behavior that we're after, from advice-driven to curiosity-led.
That's awesome. And it's so funny because 2 shows ago, we had Paul Thornton on and he was talking about the 3 skills every leader needs to have. And he talked about coaching versus leading and all that type of things as well. And then that ultimately everything kind of trickles down to communication, I think. And then, but when it trickles down from that, I think you nailed it when you said it's being curious versus directive, or impatient, I think is a killer as well.
Yeah.
Because a small business owner has a million things on their plate, and someone wants to have a conversation with them, and in their head, they're halfway through their thought and they think they know that answer, and they just want to shout, yeah, just do this. But
right.
the person hasn't gotten it out. They haven't been heard.
Yeah.
And you haven't said, oh, if you listen to the thought, you might go, oh, tell me more. Explain that to me. Where is this coming from? Why are you bringing this to me? Yeah. Why do we need to talk about this? Because I might be missing something.
Right. The thing you wanted to say that might be totally wrong. Right. And if you had blurted it out, then you're off in the wrong direction. I think like you nailed it with the communication piece, right? Like it comes down to communication, and like we don't do communication training, but the place where communication comes in really key with the organizations we work with is like if organizations everywhere are pursuing rapid growth and they're experiencing massive change and disruption, which they all are, we all are, right? Then you need a strong culture to weather all of the changes that are going on, right? So what sometimes change for people can feel like a bunch of decisions that got made and then are kind of hitting them without context and without curiosity about what my job looks like, and without the time to understand that, or the empathy to understand that I need to adjust to how I'm working. And also I'm scared and uncertain about what's happening. And that's impacting how, excited I am about these changes and jumping into them.
Right.
And so at the level of communication, it's like, where are those sticking points where you have people who are enacting a big strategic change or a big change to how you operate or whatever, how you show up for customers, whatever it is. Where is that uncertainty, and where do you build in time and better conversations to understand what people are struggling with so that they feel seen and heard and supported, and so that you can figure out how far they are on that path to like learning and changing, right? And so, yeah, you're right. It does come right down to the communication. What's happening in those conversations. The communication isn't the telling of what's happening.
No, I agree. And it's funny, this keeps coming around. So it must be impactful because, I've talked on this podcast before about in absence of information, people will make it up, but it's never good. It's never like, oh, my boss hasn't talked to me in a week because they're planning a surprise party for me. It's my boss hasn't talked to me in a week, I'm getting fired.
Right. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
The stories we tell ourselves. Yeah. Yeah.
And when you said, I'm paraphrasing, but you were talking about organizational change, and when it happens and the communication isn't complete, people have questions, they wonder, they start filling in the gaps. Yeah. And in a small business, when you're 20, 30 people, maybe 50, even 80 or 100, when the owner says they flush out an idea in their head, and in their head it's a complete idea, but they roll it out with minimal information, and it affects a lot of people a lot faster. Yep.
Yeah, you're right. And I also think the interesting thing about smaller businesses, so we work with big organizations, but we're a small organization. Yeah. And so I think that, and we're heavy memoers. We're fans of the written word at Box of Crayons through and through.
That's a great way to put people that send out a lot of memos, fans of the written word.
Fans of the written word. And like, I'm stealing this straight from like Jeff Bezos, whose memo process I really studied and I'm interested in. And like his arguments for it are like, look, people are busy. They show up at meetings and whoever speaks the loudest wins, basically. Let's force people who have interesting and new ideas that are going to make the firm better, that are make customer experience, whatever it is, better. Let's force them to struggle with articulating that. Because if you have to sit and articulate, so I think writing and thinking are the same activity, and I guess so does Jeff Bezos. But if you force people to sit down and articulate what's going on, what's the status quo today, why would this be better, then that really helps to articulate the problem. Okay, so that's thing one. Then they get that out in writing, and then you share that memo ahead of time, or you go into a meeting, and this is what he would do. You go into a meeting, and the first 20 minutes are everyone sits there and reads it. in real time. So everyone's on the same page. And then they go into a discussion of that. So we're heavy memoers here, mostly because that's how I work out my thinking. And then I share that thinking and I want to give as much context as possible. But you're right. It does in a small business, it hits everybody faster and impacts them faster. And I think there's the illusion that because you're small, you think because it doesn't need to go through so many layers of communication, this must be easier. We've all said it. And so it should just be the case. But actually, there's still a lot of, just because all three of us know each other doesn't mean that the communication is any easier or that the change is any faster necessarily. It's so
And
interesting.
we don't share a brain. I don't know nuances of what you're thinking or saying.
Right. Yeah. Or how we're looking at it and what our assumptions are. Right. Which is where, like, we think about curiosity as being a real, like, the antidote to assumptions. And so when right. So staying curious a little bit longer helps you to think, like, wait a second, how am I coming at this conversation? How are they coming at it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that's a great segue into our official topic for the day, because that was all very good stuff, but we're talking about advice. But I remember when we first talked, I thought the advice monster was outside advice, a business owner having, going to Thanksgiving dinner and everyone around the table telling them how they should run their dinner or their business.
Sure.
And you were quick to correct me and say, no. It's about the business owner giving their people advice. So walk us through the advice monster philosophy or theory.
Yeah. Well, first I'll just say, I think that what you've pinpointed there, what you've highlighted about that experience of, let me tell you how to run your business. I think that experience of getting unsolicited advice, sometimes uninformed advice, right? That it hits the same, whether it's at a Thanksgiving dinner with an uncle or it's inside your organization. And the way it hits is that it's demoralizing.
Okay.
It disempowers me. It assumes I haven't thought of things. It assumes the person with the advice has way more context and knows better. But you're right. Most of the work that we do with organizations is thinking about the use of advice and how to use less advice in the way that people lead their own teams. We do have a lot of clients who are also thinking about if we're consultancy, how do I show up for my clients as more of a thinking partner? Like, they expect me to give them answers. But if I go give all my clients the same answer, that's not going to work, right? Like, everything is highly contextual. And so clients we're working with where the taming your advice monster is critical for client conversations. It's the same thing. It's like, how do I show up and help facilitate insights?
Right.
And ask the questions to get to the right advice. But if we're thinking about it like inside of a firm, how do I tame my advice monster? Really, what we're talking about is what I said before. How do you slow down the rush to action and advice giving and stay curious longer? And what we have found, and our founder writes about this in the advice trap and in the coaching habit, is that there's three kinds of ways that this tends to show up, this advice monster habit. So you tend to be a tell it. And I'll be curious which one you are at the end. So some people are a tell it, which is the way that shows up is, ooh, goody. Like, you just started talking and I'm going to tell them the answer in about 2 seconds. And this is like, the triggers are like, ooh, I get to look smart. It's I add value by showing people how smart I am. My whole life I've been rewarded for being smart. It's that kind of a motivation. And that's how that shows up. And then we have the save it. And the save it is more of that rescuer tendency, which is like, oh, I hear what's going on for you, Corey. Let me take that off your plate. Let me do that for you.
Okay.
Right. And I will say that in the years of speaking with clients and sitting through and watching our learning experiences we deliver, a lot of people identify with that rescue, right? Like, I'm just trying to help. I'm just trying to help.
Yeah.
Right. But that looks, so it might not look like you do this, but it looks like, let me do that for you. Right. And that is a form of jumping in and saving. It's equally disempowering, though, as just telling someone what the answer is. Right. You've just taken it away completely. It's infantilizing. And then there's the control it. And the control it's the most subtle of the advice monsters, because it's not, ooh, I'll tell you the answer. It's not, don't worry, I'll take this for you. It's, that sounds very interesting. What if? And then subtly steering things back to what I actually think. And the tricky one with the control it is everyone knows who the tell it is, right? They're like, I'm going to start to talk and Shannon's going to just say her thing over top of me. They know how to spot it. The save it, they're like, oh, I can just bring this to Corey and he'll do it for me. Yay.
Right.
And I'd love to talk about that vicious cycle in a second, actually, that vicious cycle. Because that's a thing, especially in smaller businesses, that I think is helpful for people. And then, but the control it is like, in some ways, the most insidious. It's like, Corey's going to let me sit here and say my idea, and he's going to act like it matters, but we're going to end up doing his thing every time.
Yeah, I think that's like the gut punch of all of them.
Yeah, right. And so did that get
Because
it?
you feel like you're engaged in a conversation, a meaningful exchange of ideas. And then at the end, out of nowhere, it's like, okay, so I think we agree we'll do it my way. And you're like, I don't remember agreeing to any of that.
Right. Yeah, that's right. It's like you were nodding your head. Right. I was understanding you.
Yeah.
Agreeing with you.
I was being an active listener. I was giving you your
Exactly. And so what we've seen is that this very specific tendency is just so it's legion, right? Like people, and it's because leaders have been rewarded for it for so long. And because it's what they think expertise looks like. And then specifically when you're in a moment of change and disruption and uncertainty, you get freaked out and you start doing it even more, right? As opposed to slowing down and asking questions and letting people participate in the ambiguity.
Well, when you're stressed, your true tendencies get amplified, right?
Sure. Yep.
Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. Okay.
So you asked, I think I'm.
Yes. Yeah. Who are you?
In my when I used to lead people and I wanted to really, I knew I was doing number 3 when I did it. Like I would make a commitment to say, okay, here we go. I'm just going to steer these guys right around back then. We're going to do what I want to do. But I had to be in the right frame of mind and patient. And if I'm not that, if I am stressed or whatever, I go right to A.
Right.
I'm not a let me do it kind of guy.
Yeah. Good for you.
Yeah. I think that's just because I'm lazy, but I don't want to do your work and my work.
Yeah. Well, that's good. I mean, it sounds like you're avoiding some of the challenges that a lot of leaders we work with face, which is something that we think about as the 3 vicious circles. So you find the story kind of goes like this, and maybe it's less familiar to you, but it will be familiar to some of your listeners for sure, which is you have this team, right? They've started to become over dependent on you. And you've created this cycle where they come to you for advice. You give it to them
because you've given them no option.
Yeah, and they just keep coming, and then they're like, "Oh, I can hand this in." And so at some point, it starts to look like I can do this 70% well, because Shannon's going to finish it off anyway, right? So it starts to do that, and then that creates overwhelm for you. Like focusing on the feeling for the leader for a little bit, because we talked about the disempowerment for the advice receiver, but on the leader side, you've created the cycle where you've created overdependence. And now you've created overwhelm for yourself, because now you're doing your job and your whole team's job, a little bit of it or a big bit of it, depending on just how much you're taking away. And then you get disconnected from the work that matters, like the work that made you start your business in the first place or made you take the role in the first place. And that's the same kind of disconnect that's happening to all the people on the team who also signed up for that job, the best bits of which you're taking away from them.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
And then when you have the epiphany that, oh, this is what's happening, then it can often lead to, well, my managers can't do their job. They're not qualified. They're not, they don't have the experience or the capacity to do what they need to be doing, because I end up having to do it all for them, but it wasn't their fault, maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe you've coached or trained or just let them go and make a mistake or two and get it dialed in on their own.
Yeah, absolutely. And so like what we want to help people is get out of that, because too many people recognize that. And we think about that as like really a barrier to doing great work. And if great work means the work that has meaning, like for you, and the work that has impact. So it's the work that's going to drive the organization forward. So it's less safe. it maybe pushes the edges of what you already know how to do. It really is going to take that extra bit, but it's the thing that's going to like take the organization the next mile. That is, we want people to be spending more time in that work. And I think what we're solving for a lot of the time, if it's not for the engagement and the learning, it's for both the engagement and the learning of the people who are not served by having leaders that aren't coach-like. It's also to create more capacity in the leader, because their expectation for them, depending on how senior they are, is that they can see around corners and that they have time to think strategically. And if too much of their time is spent kind of looking in as opposed to looking out, especially thinking about a smaller business owner or like somebody in a key role like that for a bit, your job is less about the problems in the company and it's about finding opportunities.
Yeah.
So if you want the people on your team to be solving the problems and you want to be looking for opportunities and saying like, where can I contribute that makes sense? But I'm looking up and out. You can't look up and out if you're doing half of everybody's work.
Yeah. What else is really insightful, which just kind of pinged for me, is as you were speaking and I was actively listening, but I had some things came together in a really interesting way, because we often talk about, just you might start a company, and where our KeyHire's work is where the demands of the company, so the production, the service, whatever you're delivering, that outgrows the experience and capacity of the leaders in the company. So at the end of the day, a real good sign of that is when the leadership team just says, look, we just have to work longer and harder. That's the only way we're going to meet this deadline. When your only input is time and effort, you don't have the right process, you don't have the right procedure. And if you don't have those, because the people that are in those positions don't have that capacity or capability, they've never been in that situation, so they don't know how to build it. But what you were talking about is the owner, because sometimes the business outgrows the owner.
Yeah.
And when they're in this cycle of and you said it was the say it, take it, and the
tell it, the save it, and the control it.
Okay. So if you're doing any of those, really, and you're getting stuck doing bits and pieces of everyone else's work, you're not able to develop yourself or even actively see your business growing in the directions it's going in, because you're so down in the weeds, which is, it's a common expression, maybe overused, but you need to get up above it so you can have a strategic view. And if you're in the tactile day to day, you're not developing, you're not seeing the vision of your company, you're not seeing what's happening out there. And that's what connected for me. It's like a lot of these business owners, like they demand that they're in the weeds. I always call it, they fall in love with the chaos of the business instead of their product or service. They're more in love with how hard it is to produce what they're producing versus the quality or the speed at which they can produce things. Yeah. And maybe this is why this is a factor in them getting so drawn down in the business. I never made that connection just the way you explained it. It's really effective.
Yeah. And like just building on that, because I think that there's an intuitive force behind that actually has a negative impact for what most business owners want, which is maybe one day to exit their business, right? So I think like intuitively people think, okay, the more involved I am, the more I'm showing my value. This business critically relies upon me. And then anybody who's gone to try to, learn what it takes to exit, that's the first thing. It's like, it doesn't matter how valuable.
We're not buying a business, we're buying that person.
You're right. And they're like, oh, if the business doesn't work without you in it, it's not of much good to anybody, right? And so I do think like I'm not the founder of our organization. I'm the first CEO to follow the founder. And so my mandate was really, how do I create an organization that can thrive and survive beyond the founder? So the original creator of the IP that is the source of our whole suite of learning experiences and offerings now has like left the building. But what does that mean? Where does expertise reside? How do we provide value to our clients? That isn't, this thought leader who was here. And so like really what I've been trying to do is build distributed leadership across the business. right? And that's like a terrifying thing too. Like I feel as much as anybody else. I want to add value every day.
you're on the face of it, you're a second gen leader, right? You're the second gen of that company, like as if someone's child came in and took over for them. It's essentially what you're doing.
Yeah.
And it's challenging because everyone wants to come in and they have their ideas and they see where things can be improved. They maybe say, but it's hard.
Yeah, it's tough. And I mean, I think I had as easy a time as anybody. I think the failure rate for the first CEO following a founder is like in the high 80s or something.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Unbelievable. But I had a good go. I've had a good go at this. Like I'm 6 years in. We were supported very well through a transition process, and a lot of that relied on the humility of our founder and realizing is some of this stuff we're talking about, which is like, I'm going to have loose hands. In order for this to work, right? Like, and I can't imagine how much he had to tame his desire to, like seeing
he had to be patient and curious and all of that good stuff.
I think he's
going to happen.
Been better at that than I could probably be, honestly. Maybe. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So we've kind of gotten there, but we always like to talk about mistakes you've seen. And maybe it's through, I'm going to make an assumption. Like, I think it escapes me. The third kind of advice monster is the
control it.
So I want to think that when people take a go at this the first time, they might think they're being genuine, but they might fall into that control it cycle from the take it or the do it, or say it or take it standpoints. Am I correct in making that assumption?
I think it's safe to assume that because tell it and save it are so obvious in the way that they show up, that someone might control it and think that they are being less of an advice monster.
Right. And because they don't know how, they don't have the tools to actively listen and be curious. So they think they go into that and they think, oh, look at me, I'm doing a great job at this, but I'm still going to get, this is great. I'm listening and I'm still going to get what I want. Right. And like, maybe isn't exactly what we're trying to do here.
Yeah, totally. And I can I'll share some tools before we leave for sure. But just thinking about pitfalls, what was I going to say about that? I think that part of it, one of the things to remember is that not every conversation and every moment is a coaching moment.
Okay.
So I think that is one common pitfall, both that I experience, right? And so the way that shows up for me is like, oh, I want to include people and their thinking in decision making. I want to honor the expertise around me. I want to try not to take away the best part of everyone's job, that top strategic layer, by inserting myself there. And then sometimes I think you can end up not doing the bit of the job that's yours. So I think part of it is negotiating.
Okay.
Where do I step in, and where can I, be curious and get inputs from others? And I think sometimes you're negotiating that. And so there are moments where if you have enough relationship with people on your team, they can say, hey, I'm stuck on this. I need you to do this part. I need you to lead this part, and then I can do my piece, right? So I think like some people can fall into making everything coach-like. Like, I'll just ask questions instead of leading. I'll ask questions instead of making decisions all day long, right? And that has shown up in that question comes up when we're working with folks in organizations, which is like, wait, so is all I'm doing all the time is asking questions now? And it's like, no. So what is a moment where you want to be coach-like and be curious? And we think that that's when people have the experience and the expertise to solve something for themselves. Like they really do.
But they're doubting, or they're not sure, or they have questions.
Yeah, or they just need somebody to help them dig a little bit deeper. And maybe they're not there themselves yet with the tools of like being curious, sitting with themselves and working through things. And so part of your role as their leader and their colleague, it's not always a leader relationship, is to help them get clear. So we call that getting clear is a really good coach-like moment. So someone comes to you and they're like, "Oh, I'm really grappling with this challenge." You're going to feel the advice monster come up and you're like, "Oh, good. Okay. Tell me 2 seconds of that challenge and I'm going to tell you what to do." Right.
Yeah.
And instead it's like, "Oh, okay. That sounds tough. Like, would it be helpful if I asked you some questions?" Right. And then,
So you would even say like, "Hey, let's go through this process." Like you just called it out there and said,
that's
"Would you?
that's the
Is it
exact
okay if
phrase
I ask questions?"
the exact phrase we teach people to say is, "Would it be helpful if I asked you some questions?" And
Okay,
the
that's cool.
and the reason so manipulative, the reason that we suggest people ask that is because another common struggle we hear is that people are like resisting coaching, right? Or people are uncoachable, and like often people aren't ready yet,
Right.
or they kind of want to they want to give some consent for what's happening to them. So if they come to you and they just want to vent a little bit, and then you start like, giving them all these questions. So we think, ask somebody like, would it be useful if I asked you some questions? And it's just by saying yes, their guards down a little bit, and all of a sudden someone who seemed uncoachable is all of a sudden ready to go. So we do see like some of the barriers
Totally unique. I've never, and all the people we've talked to on this podcast and I've talked to about this type of stuff, I've never heard anyone recommend you ask the person like, "Would you like me to, would it be helpful if I asked you some questions?"
Yeah, I
That's
mean,
cool. I like
try it
it.
out. Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
Um,
it is. It's disarming and it sets it up so Now, are you a Chris Voss fan?
I have not read the book in a long time, but
So his
his main
whole thing is
yeah.
everyone knows you're trying to get the yes. So you might even say, "Would it be a bad idea if I asked you some questions?" Because then
Mm.
they no, because it's easier for them they want to say no to be
Right,
defiant.
right,
So
right,
then
right.
they get to say their no, and now their guard is down.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, maybe. I mean, try them both. Let me know how it
I'm
goes.
not trying to change Box of Crayons. I was just
No, it's
kind of
all right.
so,
It's
yeah.
all right. And I mean,
Shannon, you need to change everything you're doing over there,
I'm sure some people don't always ask, would it be useful if I asked you some
I think it's
questions?
great
We
though.
like we
I
like to
like the
teach it.
concept. I think it's very unique. So what other
Yeah.
mistakes or missteps do you see people taking when they try to coach or kind of help
Yeah.
people?
Yeah, so I think the common like mistakes around coaching, and again, like the place that we're trying to kind of differentiate our approach is that you don't need to become a coach, which can become its own pitfall, right? Like you
Okay.
don't need to become an expert coach and
Right.
go through coach training. And the pitfall here is thinking, okay, coaching is like an operational task that's going to take me forever to do. And so I could do this piece of work or I could go coach Corey. And
Right.
because it's going to take so long and I need to do it in this like 6 or 12 or 20 step method, and it's going to take me an hour because it's an hour long coaching conversation. And that's the calendar invite I've sent. All of those things become barriers. So part of what we're trying to do is have people be like, okay, we're not talking about becoming a coach. We're talking about just being a little more coach like. And that means that every interaction becomes an opportunity to be more coach like if it's appropriate. So like
Right.
you can imagine this happening over an email, right? It's like you get an email from your colleague and they're like, "Corey, all of this is going on." They send you this super, super long email. And my instinct might be to, reply and then answer every single thing, right? My response is in red, see below, right?
Yeah.
But what if you instead were like, "Hey, Corey, wow, sounds like you've got a lot going on. What's the real challenge here for you, do you think?" Send. And now
Yeah.
you've saved time. You've been lazy. You mentioned you were lazy before. Like we actually want people to be a bit more than work less hard, right?
Yeah.
And now you're forcing that person that on your team who was used to coming to you for answers. Now they're like, "Whoa, Shannon just didn't do the work for me. She asked, okay." And now they've got to sit there and they've got to think like, what is the real challenge here for me? And
Right.
then I know we're getting into kind of solutions here, but this is what it looks like, right? So this could
Right.
happen in a text, it can happen over Slack or an email or face to face, right? But thinking like these things have to take a long time, as opposed to, oh, wow, there's actually 100 times every day where I could slow down and just respond differently. And it's going to push the thinking back on the other person and put me in the role of helping to extract or clarify that thinking.
Yeah.
So I think another thing that we assume that's different from other approaches, and this gets at one of the other pitfalls too, is that some coaching is about like, it's really just like masking, how do I ask questions to guide this where I need it to go? Right. So I've decided that this is the problem with your performance, and this is the thing that needs to change. And now I'm asking questions that take us in a direction, right? As opposed to truly open-ended questions. And I think that one of the maybe unique philosophies in our approach is that we really do think that a real coaching conversation assumes that the person with the challenge is the only and best person to fully understand and articulate that challenge. Okay. So you're not coaching someone on, well, where's the bathroom? Because that's a thing they know or they don't know, right? But if someone's grappling with like, I'm having a really hard time getting this piece of work done, and I can't seem to I keep putting on my list and I can't get to it. I could start to make all kinds of assumptions like, you're new to this, you don't have the expertise. I could guess what I think the answer is to that. But probably by asking a few questions, the person with that challenge is going to unearth the real thing that's holding them back. And then we get to solve off of that, as opposed to solving off the top of what I thought the challenge was. And so that, I think that shift in mindset of like, I'm really just facilitating someone else coming to that realization, and then helping them decide the next way forward too, by asking questions. Because you can like coach someone through getting clear, and then all of a sudden be an advice monster, right? Like, oh, good, we figured out what was in the way. I'll tell you what to do now. Like, you can jump back in again, right? Yeah. But it's like, well, that's a whole other moment where it's like, hey, okay, do you want to talk about potential solutions? Would it be helpful if I asked you some questions to think about possible solutions? And then they're like, sure, let's keep going. And then, but then you're just a thinking partner. You remain a thinking partner. And then they come up with the solution, which, the research shows that if you come up with the way forward and the solution yourself, and you're accountable for it, your commitment to that idea and that outcome is so much stronger. Right. Yeah. If someone else told you what to do, right? We come right back to the advice problem. Part of the problem with being given advice is you didn't come up with it yourself. And so you're never really wed to it.
There was a couple really interesting things there, and I'm going to try to paraphrase what I think I heard you thought you said.
Sure.
So one of them that hit me was, assuming the person knows what their challenge is.
Yeah.
Like they might not know why they're struggling in that certain situation, or they might have something going on outside of work that is affecting them, but they might not understand there's a correlation or something.
That's right. Yep.
You talked about every moment is not a coaching moment, right? So there's a time and place to say, hey, look, I just asked you to get this done. You have an hour left to do it. If you could just get it done and have it on my desk for me, that'd be great.
Yep.
There's something you brought up really casually was like, you can solve a problem and then fall back into like, you always have to be on guard that this can come out. He's living in there, and he can jump out at any time.
Yeah.
So those are all great. So I really like the concepts. I think this has been a really meaningful conversation. Let's move into some kind of tools you talked about that you could offer people to kind of get them on track, so they can start being better at this. Because I know, man, it's got to be the huge majority of small business owners feel like, they're the linchpin, and they gotta answer so many questions and do this. And if they could just start, and they always want to hit the home run. If I could do one thing and everything would be great. And I'm always saying, we're not hitting home runs here. We're hitting 4 singles. Like, you got to do it a little bit at a time, little piece. So if there are some tools you could give them that would help them just take a little pressure out of the tire, a little, just, I got an hour free on my calendar all of a sudden, So walk them through those.
Yeah. So this is very, very tactical, but that I think that's the level at which this shift in behavior change happens. So the first thing is, if folks are listening and hopefully you've already thought about how you show up as a tell it or control it or save it.
Right.
So first step is this noticing, right? Let's notice who I show up that way with, because
I think when you said to me, I'll be interested to know, and I'm sure you did that on purpose, which one you are. So people listening automatically think, oh, which one am I?
Yeah, totally. Yeah. And also to get more specific, it's which one are you with which people, because this comes from like transactional analysis. Yeah, it's all contextual, right? And it's dynamics. So there's going to be people you're tell it's with, people you're control. And I mean, so first notice that, and then get curious about why you're showing up that way. Do you find yourself jumping in to tell it with that person on your team because you don't think they've got it? You don't trust them? Like what's prompting you to do that? I think is an interesting place to sit in thinking about how your team's doing and where you're where there's a lack of trust and like incompetency. I mean, right?
Good. Right. So it might be a weak, someone you perceive as a weak teammate, like, oh, they never get anything right. And they try to come to you and you're just like, just do it like that.
Yeah. Or why do you think you have to save them? Like why, right? So I think be curious about where you're showing up with, where your advice monster is showing up and with whom. And that is part of like, you can only start to shift a behavior if you've become aware of it in the first place. Mm-hmm. And you've realized that it's costing you something. And them something. And so you don't want to be that guy anymore. So you need to have this gut level reason to want to change. So I'd start there. And then in terms of the tools, then you're like, okay, the best I can hope to do is tame my advice monster, but I'm never going to relinquish it. It's never going to go away forever. This is just not going to happen. So in those little micro moments where, Corey runs in, he asks me that question, he sends me the long email with 100 questions, take a breath, slow down, and then use a question instead. So here's some examples. These are the tools, everyone. And these are in the Coaching Habit book. So we teach.
We're going to put a link to that at the end of the show and in the liner notes.
Great. And we teach, when to coach, what are the coaching moments. We teach different questions for asking in those moments and to add into that broader toolkit. But here's just some to get you started. So someone comes in, they're rushing in. I already used this one before. What's the real challenge here for you?
That's a good one. I like that.
Yeah. And it's important to use it as is, because what's the challenge points over to the challenge. But what's the real challenge here for you suggests that there's a deeper challenge than the one currently being articulated on the surface, and moves the spotlight from something over here.
The printer's broken. Like it's, what I mean?
Exactly. It moves it to you, the person having the challenge, right? Yeah. So what's the real challenge here for you? That is the very specific question. So great. Okay, they're going to give you an answer. And what else? And what else? And you might ask that question 3 times until you really get the sense that like they've laid everything out on the table, right? But that's that digging deeper question, right?
And the question, and what else, is that different than, is there anything else?
There is. It is different because it's an open-ended question, right? Back to your friend Voss.
I guess, is there anything else is a yes or a no? Okay.
Yes or no, right? It's easy to say no to that, right? But and what else is assuming it's like, hey, there's more under there. Right. And eventually people will say, you know what, I think that's everything. I think that's all the things going on for me. But it's usually at least 3 separate articulations of digging deeper, right? So ask that a few more times and dig deeper. And then some of the other really useful questions, and it depends. Part of like what develops over time is a discernment of not only when to be coach-like and when to be curious, but also which questions to ask that are appropriate, right? But some other helpful questions are, what do you want? Which you have to deliver carefully, because what do you want is not a good delivery of that. But what do you want delivered in a really good way? And we call it the foundation question, because it's connecting to like, what is it at the base and at the bottom that I want out of this, right? Is a question that can really make people feel seen as a human, like this person really cares about me, right? It can help them clarify, right? Like if something is going on for them relationally that's getting in the way of getting work done, right? Or a path forward, that can help them articulate a lot more than they have already. And then like I won't go through all 7, but another really good way to
Give you one more. We'll go with one more.
Yeah, sure. I'll give you 2 more. So a really good opening question is what's on your mind?
Okay.
So people often will sit down with someone and say, okay, what's up? Or how are you? How are you? Right.
Yeah.
What's on your mind is open-ended completely, and it moves all the control to the other person. So they get to take things wherever they want. But it suggests what is that thing keeping you up at night? What's on your mind? Because you can go into a one-to-one, your agenda will have a bunch of stuff on it. Probably the leader populated the agenda, maybe even.
Right.
If you go in and say, what's on your mind? It's probably a whole different set of things that are on the agenda, right? Mm-hmm. So again, what can you learn when you give up that control, right? And then a question we suggest to close any good conversation where you've worked through something together is, what was most useful here for you? Which I'm curious about for you, Corey. What was most useful here for you?
Man, I'm taking so much away from this. I think this has been great. I've enjoyed this conversation a ton. I said earlier that one connection I just made about owners taking on so much. It's hard for them to kind of get their head up and see what's going on. Mm-hmm. I'll be more conscious of my advice monsters, and I really like the questioning. I like that. Are you open to some questions, or how do we phrase it? What was the phrasing?
How we what's on your mind?
No, the one when someone.
Oh, yes. Yeah. Would it be useful if I asked you some questions?
Yeah, would it be useful if I asked you some questions? I think that is pretty cool. So Shannon, we've been listening to you. You've been throwing out amazing advice. If people want to connect with you and learn more about Box of Crayons, how can we do that?
Yeah, so you can check us out at boxofcrayons.com. You can follow us on LinkedIn as well, or you can follow me on LinkedIn.
There you go.
And yeah, we host a learning preview. We call it Experience It. So it is not a preview of one of our learning experiences. It's not a mini workshop, but it's a chance for people to come in and use these questions on real challenges, just to see how quickly it changes the conversation, how quick you are to clarity, all that good stuff. And we host those once a month. So if folks want to go to our website, we do have a registration page for Experience It.
Awesome. And we're going to drop that in the liner notes. And then you have 2 books that you mentioned. What are their names?
Yeah, so they're both written by our founder, Michael Bungay-Stanier. The first one is The Coaching Habit. And then the companion book to that, also on Amazon, is The Advice Trap. And The Advice Trap gets into those advice monsters in a little more detail than the
Very
coaching.
Cool. Habit. You caught Matt off guard. He's typing like crazy right now, but we'll see if it pops up. But we will put those in the liner notes as well. This has been fantastic. Thanks so much.
Yeah, no, thank you. It was fun.
Yeah. There you go. Shannon Minifie from Box of Crayons. Don't forget to connect with me on LinkedIn. That link is in the liner notes as well. Just let us know you've listened to the podcast, and I will accept that request. And until next time, I'm Corey Harlock. I've been your host. Stop grinding and start growing.